Welcome to episode 3 of the Bible in Context. In the previous episodes, we discussed how the Israelites came to settle in the highlands of Palestine and their early beliefs. Today we are looking at how and why they chose their first kings. Up until this point, Israel would choose a temporary leader to guide them through crisis situations. But as the Philistines became more threatening, the Israelites decided to unite under one king to better defend themselves. This part of biblical history is quite academic, so we are going to divide it into 2 episodes. The first will be the discussion on the story surrounding the kings. In the next episode, we will discuss other biblical stories that originated in this period. It is important to know that we have almost no archaeological evidence from this period, so most of the stories surrounding this time comes from biblical literature. These stories did not originate in this specific period, but were written retrospectively. There is no consensus amongst scholars to when these stories were written. Some say in the period of the United Kingdom, while others think it was written much later. Be that as it may, the biblical stories surrounding the United Kingdom focus on the 3 most important kings, which were Saul, David, and Solomon. There were other kings as well, but these 3 proved to be the most prominent in the biblical narrative as found in the books of 1 and 2 Samuel. All 3 kings were portrayed in a positive and negative way, sometimes directly contradicting each other. This suggests that these stories were written by different authors who were either on the side of the specific king or against him. For example, the Benjaminite authors believed that Saul, one of their own, was a successful king and painted him as brave and honorable. Others were on the side of David. Interestingly, there are 3 different stories as to how David met Saul, as he was not family of Saul but still succeeded the throne. These vary between David marrying Saul's daughter, in being part of Saul's army, or playing music in Saul's court. The authors on the side of David described Saul as weak and cowardly, boosting David as the legitimate king of Israel. Many of these stories were not meant to be read literally. Some of the stories about David and his son and successor Solomon fell under the genre of novella. These stories were intended to be enjoyed for the entertainment value, as they were filled with intrigue and irony. They showcased human nature, stories people could identify with. We do not know how much of the biblical history surrounding the first few kings are historical facts. Some scholars believe that none of the kings existed, but they all were legendary figures in Israel's history. We only have one inscription that alludes to the existence of David. It is an Aramaic stele which dates to the 9th century BCE. Some scholars point to this stele as proof of the historicity of David, while others interpret the content to not mean house of David, but beloved, or even a reference to another god. What we do know is that the oral stories and traditions that were carried over from generation to generation were written down during this time as an attempt to unite the different tribes living in the highlands. The theory was that a common history and common religion made for united people. This first account of Israelite history is known as the Yahwist document. Although it does not appear as a singular book in the Old Testament, its influence can be traced throughout the first books of the Bible. In the next episode, we will look at the importance and content of this document.